Good.
So off you go. Recount and retell your experience in the isolation unit. Is it Cork University Hospital? It was, or
No, it's Kerry University. Kerry University Hospital.
Kerry University Hospital.
Yes.
Okay. And so you what was the reason that you went in the first place anyway?
The reason why I went to the hospital is because my doctor had advised me to go to the hospital because I have a lung infection, and he wasn't able to give me Opericinol, which is my steroid tablets, because it would mask probably me having coronavirus.
Yeah.
So the doctor had decided to admit me to the hospital for me to ring an ambulance. That's which I had done on Wednesday. The ambulance arrived to my house, monitored me at home, and decided I needed to go to the hospital, referred by my GP. I was supposed to have testing for coronavirus when I arrived there.
Yeah.
Now, I was waiting in an ambulance for 4 hours, isolated in an ambulance for 4 hours until a bed became available in isolation units.
Right.
Yes. And from then, when I was taken in to isolation unit, I had an X-ray. I had the chest monitor to monitor my heart. I had blood taken. Had oxygen levels done. But I didn't have swabs taken, which was the main purpose of me being sent to the hospital.
Right.
Yes. Now, the ambulance driver said anybody that goes into the isolation unit would have to have the swab for the coronavirus.
Right.
And after being in the isolation unit, you would have to have a taxi, not a taxi, you would have to have an ambulance transfer you back home, and you would have to be isolated in your home for 14 days.
Right.
Waiting on results.
And oh God, okay, so that's you are still supposed to self-isolate for 14 days if you're waiting on results.
Waiting on results.
Right.
If I was fit enough to go home, they would still send me home by ambulance because of the virus, the coronavirus, and I wouldn't be allowed to mix with anybody else. You know, what happened in this case, they had said I could ring a family member to pick me up and take me home, which I was told by the medic and the ambulance that was not meant to happen and that it would not happen. And I'm kind of baffled and lost to not knowing why I was sent to the Kerry General by my GP, and he refused to give me my medication I needed for my chest. But the hospital did give me a prescription for the medication I did need to take.
Right. And this is all while not having had taken a swab test from you.
Say that again. I didn't hear that.
This is all from not having taken a swab test.
Yes, from not taking a swab test. But the whole reason for me going to the hospital was to have a swab test. And that was I was referred by my doctor to go by ambulance.
And in your general kind of like ascertaining the entire play out of events, I'm just curious to in your own, was a gut feeling, or your eventual kind of like understanding of what happened. Do you think that it was human error, or do you think it was oversight, or do you think it was lack of adhering to protocol, or what do you think it was that maybe made them not take a swab test, even though that was what you were supposed to be in there for?
I don't know if it was an error. Well, I don't see that it should have been an error. I was in an isolation unit.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what the procedure was meant to be.
And I know hospitals are generally busy anyway. But how did it look to you when you were in there? I mean, obviously you couldn't see all units. You couldn't see all.
No, the special units are made up. And there's a corridor you walk down, and there's big rooms going along which are closed off. Only the medical team are allowed to touch the doors. You actually are not allowed to touch anything, only for when you're inside your room.
Okay.
They come in with masks, the whole rig outs. Yeah. Like aliens, and even when they assisted me from the ambulance, they were dressed in.
Do they have their heads covered with a kind of a white kind of plastic part on the hood as well and all that?
Yes, they did, and goggles and gloves and.
It's amazing to think that they would have gone through all of that effort and yet oversaw, made a mistake in not taking a swab and then send you home from an isolation unit.
Yes.
It's kind of unusual, isn't it?
Well, it is, and it was frustrating and it was annoying for myself because I personally felt there was no need for me to attend an isolation unit. But from my doctor's point of view was me taking steroids to make me healthy would probably mask the effect that I could possibly have coronavirus. Yes. So I know myself, I suffer with chest problems anyway, and every 5 to 6 weeks I would have to have this medication, which my doctor's aware of and I'm aware of, but she has procedures to follow. She followed her procedures by sending me to the hospital, but the hospital, of course, failed to do their job.
Interesting, yeah. Very interesting. I wonder. I mean, like, I suppose you can't. I'm not going to play devil's advocate and say, maybe I am. I was going to say maybe like that people are so busy that these are all new protocols to medical staff that they're not used to following them. That one person gets waylaid while they're trying to move from one level to another with information about you, and then they get confused or forgotten about. Their memory gets hijacked by another issue or event that takes place that they then don't. Continue with what they're supposed to do, which is quite common and quite normal for human beings to actually forget and move on. But what I find actually quite perplexing is the fact that not only was a swab not taken, but that you were physically in an isolation unit and that they just let you home.
Yes.
I find that a bit kind of confusing because if you're a patient that has been taken into an isolation unit, I mean, can they determine solely from an X-ray that you haven't got this alleged virus, this coronavirus? Like, why? Like, and do all the medical practitioners across all countries across the world now have a blueprint and a steps and that they're supposed to follow to be able to diagnose correctly a virus like this? Because apparently it's through an X-ray. I would have thought you can only see things like congestion, inflammation, blockage, this kind of thing. And if you can see those things to do with flu, you can see them to do with asthma, you can see them to do with COPD. I'm not a medical practitioner myself, but I'd imagine that's reasonable. Like, I would like maybe for some kind of a medical staff, somebody who practices medicine, a GP or something, to actually, or a surgeon to actually make contact and actually find out and say to me, explain what the difference is on an X-ray, that you can see the difference from those particular ailments to something like something that is the coronavirus. Like, I mean, on an X-ray, how can you determine through an X-ray the differences of inflammation, blockage, or congestion? That would be different, you know. I would love to know on an X-ray what that would be.
Yes, and maybe I think they might have been looking for pneumonia as well. Another aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know, so I found it quite annoying. That was actually put through that drama.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I could be a carrier, and they're not aware of that either. So yes.
So yes. Is there anything else you want to mention?
And the swabs that they do and the bloods that they take, it all has to be transferred to Dublin. There's only one lab that actually deals with this, and this is actually in Dublin. So yes, so that will take time in itself to actually the results to come back. And I'll say for myself, if I was somebody that needed to go out, I had no assistance, I would still have to go out into the community, maybe carrying coronavirus.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so yes.
Okay, Susan. Is there anything else you want to mention?
No, I just kind of wanted to put that forward and just really wanted to know why somebody would have to be taken to an isolation unit. And actually, we'll say only half the job was done. You know, and being sent home is quite annoying. Yeah.
I would imagine so. Okay, thanks very much for making the call and giving us that information.
Okay, thanks very much.
Take care. Look after yourself. Bye. Bye.